Welcome to the Town Board Workshop meeting on Thursday, September 7th. Please rise and salute the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Emergency exits are behind the town clerk and also the door you came in. Roll, please.
Supervisor Prody?
Here.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Rebellard?
Yes.
And let the record reflect that Councilman Gutierrez is absent at this time.
And at this time, we will have a presentation by Waterworth. So whenever you're ready, Lachlan.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for having me here today. My name is Lachlan Hunter. I'm an account executive with Waterworth. I'm very grateful to Supervisor Prody and, of course, everyone else for allowing me to present. I'm very excited for what we have in store today. I'm going to begin by sharing my knowledge on the town's needs and priorities that Supervisor Prody and myself have discussed in previous conversations. And I'm going to follow that up with a demonstration on how Waterworth can help the town of Amenia achieve these priorities. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen here. I'm hoping you all can see, and I'll pull it up. So the biggest key goal that we had discussed in our previous conversations was there's a big need to secure additional funding to account for major capital needs and the significant increase in costs that every town across America is seeing. As well, we want to address the fee schedule to ensure that we're bringing enough revenue to meet our revenue requirements. Some of the related priorities are reinvestment of capital into aging infrastructure and addressing some of the big wells that I know that there needs to be a reconstruction of a new well, and as well financially forecasting for the long term to provide visibility into the future and results in the short term. I also want to look at comprehensive planning to set goals and strategize on execution of these goals, along with some rate analysis. I know that rates are currently the lowest in the county, and there will definitely be a need to increase them in the near future. But with that, we definitely want to make sure that we're protecting affordability and avoiding any sort of massive increases during the process of adjusting rates. And the last thing is demonstrating capital needs, funding scenarios, and long-term impacts to everyone within the community, from the board to town staff to the public. The next thing I want to touch on before I dive into the Waterworth platform is exactly what you'll get by working with Waterworth. I think it's important to highlight this. Of course, the software is the beating heart of everything here. But at the start, we want to onboard everything for you, run it for you. All of you within the town have big fires to put out and a lot of, everyone's very busy. So we want to take that burden off you by updating the model, making sure things stay up to date with the current market conditions, and making sure that anytime you need us, we're there as much as you need us. As well, we'll be that chief strategy officer that can come in and explore different scenarios when we're looking at whether it's bonds, grants, or adjusting revenues. We'll be there to help you explore those scenarios and ensure what's going to be the best suited for the town. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go into our platform here, and I'm going to start by talking about our long-term financial model. Now, this is going to be very beneficial in terms of understanding cost recovery and making sure that we're operating towards financial sustainability. And this is kind of the beating heart of Waterworth, as we want to make sure that we're in a financial position that's going to meet our needs. Now, I know there's a lot of colors here. I'm going to start by breaking down the layers to really give everybody a good understanding at what we're looking at. So the first thing we're going to look at is operating expenses. These are going to be our hard costs, all of our salaries, things within the budget that are there no matter what. And then we'll put on any current debt service that we're facing from bonds in previous years, And then we can also look at proposed debt service. When we do have a big project coming up down the pipeline, we can look at, okay, what are the debt payments going to be on that? And Waterworth will calculate that for you. And the next thing we're going to see here is all of our capital improvements. Now, a lot of times when looking at full cost recovery, a lot of communities are just looking at operating expenses and neglecting all of the capital improvements that have to be done. So in this picture, we have for 5 years, it's pretty clear on what our needs are. We know what projects we have to address. Off into the future here, it's a pretty straight line. Due to some aging infrastructure, we know that we're going to have to do something. There's not going to be a year where we don't do anything. So we want to prepare for that the best that we can, although it may fluctuate. And we could also put in some capital expansion. So if we are going to build a new well, or if we're looking at increasing capacity to manage growth, we can add that in here as well. And now what we have a look at is all of our revenue requirements, all the things that need to be funded over the next 15 years. So now that we can see that, we can also stack on top all of our revenues, which is going to really tell the whole financial story of where are we at today and what needs to be done. So we're looking at some sale of water service that we're getting from our revenues currently, some other operating revenue, maybe we have some developer contributions, some non-operating revenue, and then any grants or borrowed funds that the town may have, we can put that in here as well. And why we're doing this is we're really trying to highlight a couple things, and these things we're trying to highlight are going to be where are the funding gaps within the community. And as you can see, there's a few major funding gaps here, which is going to get us to the punchline of this whole picture, which is where does our cash position currently sit with our upcoming needs? And as you can see, due to those funding gaps that I had just highlighted, well, our cash position is going right into the ground around 2027 due to some major capital improvements that we have coming up. Now, in the town of Amenia's case, maybe this is some well reconstruction or any sort of aging infrastructure that has to be addressed. And unless we figure out a way to fill this funding gap, we're going to be without jobs. So what we want to do is throw in a couple of reserve policies to make sure that we're actually maintaining and maintaining our financial sustainability. So we can put in an operating threshold, which a lot of communities have is 20% of their operating expenses, all the way up to 50. And then maybe we'll have a cash position target, which is covering all of our operating expenses. And that's where we'd really like to see our cash position be in the future. So now that we have a full picture on where we're currently at today, the question then becomes, well, how do we solve this? How do we fix our cash position? And into the future, how can we ensure that what we do today, we are staying sustainable in the long run? Now, I tend to go fast. If anybody has a question, please just jump in. But I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I would love to explore the scenario of if we're going to start looking at fee schedules or rates. That's generally quite a common way for communities to adjust their cash position. There's obviously multiple other areas we can do that in, whether it's adjusting tier structures or anything of that nature. But for the sake of today, what we'll do is first of all, look at a borrowing scenario so that we can fix that funding gap that we see. So we're going to go into step 5 here, which is all of our borrowed funds. And we're going to propose and look at what it would be like to take out a bond in 2027 to cover our projects. So in 2027, we'll take out a bond. And I'm just going to show you how easy it is to import things into this system and how it directly changes what our dashboard looks like. So as you can see, I've put in a bond here. Maybe we'll say it's going to be $4 million to cover multiple projects. And maybe we're seeing a 3.5% interest rate on that. Right away, that's going to calculate our debt payments for us. So you don't have to do anything. You're not messing around with any sort of formulas that you typically would in Excel. And off into the future, it changed our payment schedule and it increased our debt payments. So now that we go back here, we can see it almost covers exactly what we need, and our cash position is a bit more stable off into the future. It's not taking a nosedive. But as we go and actually get this bond, we have to go to a bonding agency, and we're going to say, hey, we need you to help us out here. We also want to be able to demonstrate to them that we'll be able to pay that back. That's all they really want to see. So when we're increasing our debt capacity, we want to make sure that we can show them that we have the funds available. So we'll create a plan. Now, this doesn't mean that this is necessarily what's going to get passed, but we can create a plan to pay that back and look at what would be needed. So I went into step 7 here, and first thing we're going to look at is just some general rate increases. Supervisor Perotti and I had been talking. I know that the biggest thing is we want to avoid doing any sort of massive increase, which is really going to put a toll and a burden onto the residents. So what we could do is by looking at today, what do we need to do to prepare for that big ticket item that's coming up in 27? Well, it probably means we're just going to have to do a few years of incremental increases at 5%. And if we make increases starting today at 5%, well, that right away balances out our cash position so it is completely stable into the future. And that's really what we're trying to drive home, is if we start doing something today and preparing for the things that are coming up in the future, we're not going to put as much of a burden onto our taxpayers and onto our community, and we can get the things done that need to get addressed. Does anybody have any questions as I'm diving in here?
Did you say that the green was capital expenditures, the top? So the capital expenditures beyond the big,
Right,
beyond the bond?
Up to 2028?
Yeah, what are the presumed capital expenses after that point?
Great question. So that's
Thank
actually
you.
what we determine in the platform as well. There's a lot of different things we can do in here. I don't want to dive too deep into the weeds, but what we can actually do is determine an annual cost of sustainable ownership. So we can take an export from your GIS system, look at all of your assets that are in place and take an average from them all and determine, okay, based on their estimated service life, this is what we're going to have to be reinvesting into our system, but Waterworth is going to calculate that for you. So that's going to create a steady budget for what we can assume we'll have to be reinvesting year over year. Did that kind of answer the question correctly, or can I dive in a bit deeper?
No, that's what I was asking. That's great.
Perfect. Awesome. Any other questions on this side before I show one more example of what a different scenario?
Can you show me again the line that you are on the graph that shows if you do a 5% increase in fees?
Mm-hmm.
I've lost
Great
track.
question.
Which is which?
Yeah, so pretty much if we're looking at any sort of increase in rates, that's going to affect these yellow lines as they're going to go up. So if I were to go back here, we're looking at all of our rate increases. These yellow lines are going to be all of our revenues coming in from the sale of water service. So if I make this 0%, you'll see that into the future, it's staying the exact same, and our cash position is taking a nosedive because we're seeing inflation on everything. So we want to at least keep up with that inflation. Mm-hmm. But if I were to put in, so let's say for an example, one thing I was going to show is at first we had 5% increases off into the future. If I were to say, well, we're looking at this up until 2027, we're not actually in the red. Can't we just wait until 2027 to do a rate increase? Well, we could then calculate, okay, if we were to plan for 2027 to be our first rate increase, it's probably going to have to be a 15%, and then instead of 5% onward, we'll maybe have to do 8% just to get that cash position to a stable place in the future, up to our cash position target. But I think to answer your question more directly, what the percentage that we put in here affects is going to be the cash position line, which is that solid black line, and the the orange lines as well, because that's the revenues that we're projecting outwards to see from our sale of water service.
Okay.
Are the yellow lines stepping up 5%? It looks like they're kind of flat and then they start going up. Or are we looking at not the one that you first proposed?
Yeah, exactly. So this one, the one that I've just proposed now, is 15% starting in 2027. So all these years, I mean, 2023 backwards, that's just the historical numbers that we would have gotten. But from 2024 to 2026, they're flat because we have 0% rate increases. We have no rate increases, so we're going to see the same number year over year, unless we see maybe a little bit of growth. And
it's
then
too
why
small
it jumps
for us.
up is in 2027, we're planning for a 15% increase to get to a stable cash position in the future. But what we're pretty much trying to demonstrate is 15% later, it's actually not even as beneficial as just doing a 5% across the board, because a 5% across the board will keep it steady the whole way through.
Okay. I didn't realize we're too far away to see the dates, the years. That's why I didn't understand that we were sort of starting in the middle. Okay, got it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we're looking at this annually in terms of, and I mean, this model has the capabilities to go out past 15 years. We say a solid place to look at is 15 to 20 years. And this is all going to be projections, but we want to avoid flying in blind, waiting till the house is on fire. That's why we look at these things a little bit further out.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask a burning question that I've had for a while?
Yeah.
So when we looked at the wastewater opportunities in Amenia, we did some feasibility studies and realized that you cannot exceed the median household income to build out a wastewater. So a $12 million project was $3 million short, of which we could not raise because our people who were in the proposed district, it would have exceeded X amount of their of the allowable increase to them. So is there a similar threshold which we cannot exceed that would protect the homeowner from just escalating costs beyond
That's
their
great.
median household income? I'm just curious because I think it was the comptroller's office or somebody who looked at the numbers and said, oops, you know, you're going to have to find $3 million somewhere else, because it's not coming out of these people's back pocket. You're going to have to find grants or outright donations, and nobody else in the district can help. You have to, you know, it's just that you can only tax the people in that district.
That's a really great question. Yeah, thanks for asking. So essentially, it depends on where your rates are currently at. Based on my conversations with Supervisor Perotti, there is some room. That being said, let's say, for the example, if you had a tool such as Waterworth and you put in those scheduled rate increases, got that feedback saying, oh, that's going to be too high, you're still missing $3 million. Well, now we could go to a grant agency, and the same way we can demonstrate the need to increase revenues, we can demonstrate to them the need for their grants, right? We had one community who we work with that actually built out 2 separate models. So one like this with a grant and one like this without a grant. And their cash position had taken a dive without the grant, obviously. And they ended up receiving the grant because they demonstrated need, which is what a lot of the time these grant agencies want to see. There's just not a lot of ways to really demonstrate that visually. Oftentimes it's just a conversation and everybody's fighting for that same pool of money. But with that being said, we can explore all types of different scenarios in here, whether it's we're looking at grant funding, bonding, or revenues. We can make adjustments based on what's feasible and what we're able to actually do. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm still wondering if there isn't a standard threshold of which we cannot exceed. But I can find that. But I do.
Not for a water district.
We're not for a water district. Okay. Whatever it takes to provide clean, fresh water to our district, that's what we are able to tax.
And the district needs to support itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Needs
100%.
to be able to have enough revenue coming in to pay all the expenses.
But that's probably operating, so capital improvements may be a little different as far as
Well, capital improvements, we'd
we've
have
got
to look
find
in other
grants.
areas for,
Yeah, I would think.
which he spoke about bonding or grants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for capital improvements, oftentimes, sorry, did someone ask a question? It cut out a little bit on my end.
I don't think so, no.
No? Okay, perfect. Yeah, the last thing I'll touch on is when we are talking about capital improvements, oftentimes, revenues need to be sustainable, so when we do go out for bonds, that they can actually be paid back. But oftentimes when we have a huge spike in capital improvements that need to be, addressed, that's where we'll go and actually receive debt. And we want to be able to demonstrate to these bonding agencies the same way we would to the grant agencies, with the current revenues that we have in place, we will be sustainable enough to pay this back, because that's what they're looking for as well. And that's what we can show within Waterworth, which is what that black dotted line is. The cash position we'd like to be at is essentially where our operating expenses are. But we want to keep it there when we do do huge capital improvement projects.
I would assume with this model, we can give fairly clear estimates of what the price will be to people in the district. That's something we don't have for water. We actually did get that as part of the engineer's report for wastewater, and that seemed really critical to sort of, especially since this is a water committee now that includes a number of residents from the district. I think that's a piece of information they're really anxious to understand, and it looks like this would give them that information, which is great.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. We want to just be able to inform, educate, and give a clear picture to everybody within the community, residents, all of yourselves, and of course the town staff, that full picture on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we're going to go by doing it. Are there any other questions for me before I jump out of the tool here?
It doesn't look like it.
Good.
No? We're all good to go? Perfect.
I'll
Well, I
make
wanna be
sure
mindful-
I'll make sure the town board has your contact information if they have any additional questions.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. I'm open to any questions, happy to chat on the phone. I'm here to speak with anybody if they'd like even a bit more of a demonstration or anything of that nature. I'm here.
Oh, I do have one more question. The annual subscription, it has first service area and optional upgrade to an additional service area. What does service area mean in this context?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're able to visualize and map out any fund that you have within the town. So we've done general fund, we've done airports, electricity, streets, sanitation, roads, as it's all the same math for us. So whatever else you see fit in terms of having this clear picture for that fund, we can map it out within Waterworth, no problem.
Great, thank you, that's very clear.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, I want to thank you all so much for having me today. I'm very grateful, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Bye now.
Hey, is there any public comment?
do real quickly. Hi, I'm Charlie Miller. I just wanted to give a quick update from the wastewater committee. The Housatonic Valley Association did the first round of surface water testing last week. There are a couple of things that they are able to test for in the field. The water samples will be sent to a lab to test for a myriad of other things. It looks very positive so far. There were a couple of sites that had very heightened E. coli in the water samples that were tested in the field, which is what we want to demonstrate. Nitrogen and E. coli are really big indicators of impairment to the water body that we're trying to demonstrate is impaired. And by virtue of us establishing a municipal wastewater system, it would eliminate those impairments from failed septics. So it's very encouraging. They're looking to do their next field testing, or sampling, I should say, next week when it rains. Rain is helpful because it pushes things that are in people's yards and whatnot into the water body. I wanted to, Vicki, you had a question about drinking water affordability. The EPA says that affordability for drinking water should be no more than 2.5% of the median household income. I believe that New York State also uses that same determination, and there are a number of programs in New York State to subsidize people whose water bills may exceed that 2.5% or whatever the percentage is for the state.
That is very helpful, thank you.
So, and if anybody's listening, and if anybody feels like even their current water bill exceeds their median household income, so that is everybody who lives in your household's income is calculated in this, I guess we can find it and I'll send it to the supervisor that she can put it online so that they can apply for that program.
That's great.
It will also pay, I think, past bills if there's anybody who is in arrears. And that's all I had one question. I'm sorry, I've totally forgotten. That's all from me. Thanks.
Well, glad to hear that testing is successful, although successful in that case is a little bit...
Depressing.
Yes, thank you. Good, well said.
I do have two comments that I did share with the board that I received via email. Mia Genovese says that she's in favor of seeing this project completed. And for those that may not be aware, I did see on Facebook that Paul put something out there if anybody wanted to see the Amenia Green project to email me. So I got one. Thank you, Paul. The second email that I'm sharing this evening.
I'm sorry, what project are we talking about?
The Amenia Green.
Oh, okay.
He says, if, just email me, so you have it. The other email that I got is coming from Jean Gutierrez. She is writing to us, and I do have the entire email before you. And to summarize it for the residents, there was an accident that occurred on Amenia Union Road right in front of her house. And what she's looking to do, and she's formally requesting that the town board send a town resolution to the Commissioner of Dutchess County Public Works, requesting that the speed limit on Amenia Union Road be lowered. Some of the details of a specific incident were shared in there. So this is an area that I know that has frequented some accidents. So with that being said, I'm presenting it to the board.
Thank you.
And that's all I have for written public comments.
Town clerk report.
Okay, so presenting to the town board this evening, the local share collected for the previous month in the office was $654.25, and the local share was remitted to the supervisor in the amount of $581.25. Prior to this meeting, I did circulate the previous meeting minutes. Has the board had the opportunity to review? I know that the comments that were shared for the July and August meeting that Erica took have all been inputted.
Great.
So thank you for those comments.
I did not look at them. I was on my
That's
list.
fine. Nope, that's fine. So we'll do it at the next meeting, so everybody has them. The hard copies are before you and electronically shared.
Okay.
And then just to move this evening along, I do want to share that Michelle Smoji, who is always so diligent in sharing with me her announcements for the senior trips and activities. So tomorrow, Friday, September 8th at noon at Four Brothers, they're having their lunch in. So, and then also coming up in October 10th, it's going to be a Tuesday, the Aqua Turf Club. They're going to do a polka polka. $52 per person, $3 cash tip. So if anyone's interested, please reach out to Michelle next week on this fun, exciting trip. Her phone number is area code 845-877-9430. And that will conclude the town clerk's report for this evening.
Resolution number?
For this evening, we're beginning with resolution number 94.
Authorizing execution of a hold harmless and indemnification agreement in connection with the prospective purchase of a particular property for workforce housing. Whereas the town of Amenia is seeking to purchase a parcel of property located in the town of Amenia for workforce housing, whereas the town is seeking to perform certain tests to determine if the premises qualifies for certain grants, to determine all remediation costs, and to determine if the premises is suitable for workforce housing. Whereas the owner of the premises is willing to authorize access to the premises to perform the aforementioned testing upon the town executing a hold harmless and indemnification agreement, and the contractors and/or subcontractors providing the necessary certificates of insurance to the satisfaction of the owner's attorney. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. The resolutions set forth above are incorporated in this resolution as it fully set forth and adopted herein. The town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor to execute a hold harmless and indemnification agreement in substantially the same form as attached hereto. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second that.
You here? Are you here?
I was reading it. I was reading it.
Supervisor Parodi.
No.
Yes.
Councilwoman Doyle.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Other matters?
Oh, I'm sorry, can I just ask this question on this, Victoria? What has to happen from here, Ian, once this is approved? What are the steps from here between us and the key, I guess?
So there was an email I responded to Vicki. I sent an email to the board outlining all of the steps. You should have that email, but essentially we need certificates of insurance. There's a letter that the attorneys requested from the insurance carriers.
Okay.
Nope. Yes, now it is.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Got
it's
it?
right
Okay.
here, thank you.
So I laid out everything in an email to the board. Yeah, all the
Thank you.
details as to the next steps and
Great.
everything that we should have.
Yeah.
If there's any questions or anyone wants to discuss it, you can contact me.
Thank you. Sorry, Victoria.
That's okay. Okay, I am collecting worksheets from departments. We need to set some dates for budget meetings in October. We can do that either at this meeting or next meeting if you think you have a better idea of when you'll be available. But the tentative, you'll be getting the tentative budget before October 5th, so it would be in October.
I can do that now if that works for everyone else. Okay. Victoria, did you have some dates in mind?
Nope.
No, okay. Wow, all right.
It's hard, you're like herding cats as it is.
I'm sure
I'm
we
going to
are.
let you pick out the
I'm
dates
sure we
and
are.
time.
I guess maybe in that case, it makes sense for all of us to send in dates that were available, so.
That would be great.
Okay.
You're done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Town board comments?
Brad, are you going to do are you going to just give a brief recap on the enhancement meeting?
Yeah, around 15 people or so showed up for the meeting. I did get an email from Margie. Let me just see what that is. Look at that. And basically, it was a roundtable discussion, more chair discussion, a lot about the design of the raised park. A lot of ideas were submitted, and now one of the things that we ended up on was creating a subcommittee who more or less submit more drawings and come back to the committee with their ideas. And we're going to establish a date for that meeting, I'm sure. But let me just check the email here. I thought I marked it.
Did you discuss the title search at all?
We did. It was just more of an informative thing because I had Ian's email on that already about title. So Leo and I did give comment on that, about where we are with that.
It was like a history lesson.
It was, but it stopped at a certain point. It was a limited history lesson.
Yeah.
I love the reference to Emily Gridley and Noah Gridley, right? I mean, these were all such historical figures there.
Right. But we only got as far as 1918, is that correct?
I have no update. I sent an email to the board indicating that we're waiting for an update from the title company with regards to the 1918 surrogate court file. I don't have that as of yet, so nothing to report there.
So that's the part where when the owner passed, it went to his family, and then it sort of lost track after that, more or less?
So, yeah, there was a surrogate court file that may have some direction. What the title searcher did was find other deeds from land with that family name. And within it, they had referenced particular heirs that were all of the known heirs at that time. So presumably that's all there is. I can't confirm all of that yet, but and what they did is they ran a search then of those heirs and found nothing locally with regards to the properties. There was a reference to some of there was a reference to an Albany address. So they also went to the surrogates court in Albany County and searched there as well, and nothing. So the one surrogate court file, which is out for microfilming now, which is just kind of odd that the timing of it, but it is what it is. We're waiting for that to come back, and hopefully that will have some indication as to what happened with that property.
And Ian, I'm presuming that if there's information in that file, that would help lead to the next step. I mean, I assume that there have been other owners in between. Okay.
Yeah. So there, when I got the report, I read it, and I had many of the same questions that you guys had, because it seemed like there was a loose end here. And so I reached out, and so they are looking into it. They are going to write a follow-up report, and we'll figure out the next step from there.
Okay, great. There was some conversation at the meeting about whether the recommendations from the enhancement committee should wait until after the ownership is known, but it was decided that we should come up with a sort of a recommendation and hope that it sort of catches up with the title search.
Well, has anybody looked at the Metro North right-of-way?
That was something that was mentioned last night.
It says 33 feet from the center of the
Right.
tracks in the deed, so I think we're pretty confident that that holds.
Yeah, so what it looks like in the report is the property that was owned by the family when they built out the railroad. That's when that property got split. That's why they talk about the westerly border of the property. That's a definitive title record and border. So that is the edge of the railroad property, and that's what split it. That's what left this little piece that we don't know exactly where that sits just yet. So.
Okay.
Was there anything in there about I couldn't read the handwritten deed that was provided? I could if I spent enough time on it, but as far as I can tell from the report that we got summarizing what they learned from their deed research is that I didn't see any reference as to what that raised park was actually used for historically, but it may be in that deed description if we took the time to read it carefully through.
Well, the title company went through all of that. If you have a specific question,
I think it's just for historical reference would be interesting if he's going through all the trouble of deciphering that handwritten record, those handwritten records. It would be great.
I would say put that in an email and I can forward it to them.
Okay.
And we
Why
can try to
not?
find- Yeah, and
Right.
they'll probably be able to find it. I did not read all of the reports because the town board, I'm sure, doesn't want to pay twice for me to
No,
do that. So,
no.
so I didn't read it, but they would probably know where it is.
Okay.
And so if there are questions, certainly send them and I can forward them over.
Yeah, if he sees it in reference, it would be great to have that summarized.
So the only other thing, excuse me.
No, please.
Is that the purpose of the subcommittee is to organize a draft and formal plan that will be presented at the next board meeting.
Of the whole piece of property,
Yeah.
or just the pocket part?
The entire piece there, yeah.
Because it involves the parking as
The
well.
parking as
So
well,
it's that
the whole
strip.
piece of land.
And it'll include the right-of-way?
Yes.
Yeah.
And were they talked about doing it for the next town board meeting? Because I heard them discussing dates.
later
for the
date,
meeting.
I'm sorry.
Okay, a later date, I thought so.
Okay.
It takes a little pressure off, so.
And the comment that I had, or the thing I wanted to find out about, is we had a conversation about, since the rates for fee in lieu of are now changed in the zoning code, if we were going to send a letter to kind of announce to the property owners that would impact in advance, that's now part of the code, as it's been included in the part of Dutchess. I mean, it's part of the zoning code that's online now as well. And I don't think we ever figured out what we wanted to do about that. My sense is that we probably should, just because it will evolve. It will avoid dealing with this situation kind of last minute when a bill is sent. And what we had discussed was actually having the building inspector send a note to inform them of that change in the zoning ahead of time.
Well, we don't actually send a bill. It's actually more of a report that's sent to them, and I think that's premature at this point.
Okay, I guess my concern is that if we don't, I mean, it's not a bill, but it would be something that they would be liable for at the next trigger point in the agreement. And the idea was just kind of make them aware of that. I think the concern was that we might end up with a lawsuit, but I think that there would be a lawsuit one way or the other.
Well, I don't believe in poking the bear, so why don't we just wait to the point when, you know, when we have to, you know, ask for additional funds when it is due, with an explanation at that time.
Okay. Brad, Vicki, do you have thoughts on that?
That sounds fine to me, just,
I thought that's what we discussed at one point anyway, was to wait for the appropriate moment.
Okay.
So, can I just on this point? So the Housing Board is going to begin publicizing that we have increased the amount due by the developer significantly, because it has been a overwhelming sentiment of residents in this town that the fee was extraordinarily low and that there was no contribution to the town. So I think it's remarkable that the Amenia Housing Board was able to propose this change in the fee in lieu of language, along with other workforce housing changes in the code, that there were multiple public hearings according to the law and the way that needed to be done, and that it was ultimately passed in March. So just so you know, that will become public. I mean, it's already public, but we're going to use that. It's a campaign. It's a very important element. And
So your concern is that they're going to find out in any event, and it would probably be better for the board to let them know.
I don't understand why
rather
the
than
board is so
housing board.
trepidatious about, you know,
We're not
informing-
trepidatious, we're just
You use the words,
trying,
do
we're
not poke
trying
the-
to protect the town.
You use the words, don't poke the
Apparently you
bear.
aren't.
You used the words "don't poke the bear." My committee, along with this town board, passed a change in the fee that increased it from $611,000 that was supposed to equal 25 workforce housing units to well over $2.4 million that is due by this developer. And if you don't believe that that's an important contribution to this town to pay for the water district that we just got a presentation on.
I didn't say that. I'm just
Your
saying.
actions seem to make it
Well, I
appear
don't
that
care
way.
what you think about my actions. I'm looking at what's the best way to approach this for the town and with the town attorney.
Okay, well, again,
Not by what you
we are
think.
moving forward with that. So if the town board decides not to, I don't understand why, but
And
that's your
public comment
prerogative.
is over.
I'm sorry?
So that being the case, I guess that the property owner will find out from the housing board rather than the town board.
Are there any other town board comments?
I think I should mention that there is a report, a preliminary report, and I've passed it on to the co-liaisons to the Climate Smart Task Commission. That's Stacy Mantle and the CAC Chair Michael Peak, to take a look at the greenhouse gas emissions report for the town of Amenia, for the town municipal contributions of greenhouse gases. So it's quite a comprehensive report, and once they've taken a look at it, I've made some basic corrections, just technical typos, and then once that's done, we'll provide that to the rest of the town. It's very interesting. And the second point is that Stacy Mantle is applying for the Clean Energy Communities grant that she helped earn by providing, I believe this is the grant that was a result of her successfully putting on a campaign to get at least 10 people to sign up for community solar, this community solar project. That was done. She's getting $5,000 for the town to further implement into clean energy analysis and proactive ways of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions here in the Amenia. And the money that we're going to use from her previous grant that she got for the town of $5,000 is going to go towards an energy audit. It was something that she worked with the supervisor to try and figure out what the best use of it is. We had done an energy audit when early on when we moved into the town hall. So we have that baseline study, and now we can see what all, with this current energy audit that is being, that will be conducted with this next $5,000 grant is all the improvements that we've made. The new heating system, the new UV lighting and ballasts, and the leftover money from those is proposed that we use it towards mini splits. So we continue to use non-carbon emitting technology to heat and cool our building and reduce our energy use and to reduce our cost of energy.
So those are
it's cleaner
electric.
and cheaper.
Those are electric. They're electric sourced as opposed to oil
Electric,
or gas.
right. They don't use any combustible systems, and they are very efficient. They're just an expensive investment up front, but you recoup it, I believe, over time. And we've already started that, but we need more of those units to continue heating and cooling our building more efficiently. So kudos to Stacy. I'm going to be working with you to help you get that done. What else? So on the front of the theater arts program, we did take a look at the auditorium in the Weebatuck School District in the high school auditorium, and it is absolutely amazing. It has all of the lighting, has all of the, we believe, all of the sound system. We have brand new, it was a complete new facility because there was flooding that was like 18 inches deep in there, I guess, because something leaked, and They got a bunch of money from insurance because it was a complete gut, and they completely redid the stage. It's brand new. All we need is a spotlight and a couple of other things that are specified in the contract. So we're very close, but we're not quite ready to sign it because I still have some outstanding questions that I need before signing the contract that they can provide. But it's extremely close.
So is it moving to Weebatuck?
It is moving to Weebatuck unless there's some extraordinary last minute, but we have a lot of support from the business manager, a finance manager. His name is Robert Farrier, correct. And he assures me that he will provide, at no cost to the town, like to see that in writing, but he suggests that everything is, the staffing that's going to be needed to make sure that the building is open on a Sunday for the performances, for the after-school programs, all of those things are going to be seamless. And they have people and staffing that will work with us to make sure the right kids get to the program on the right dates across the street. They'll walk them safely across the street. There's a lot of moving parts that made me nervous about this, but with some serious assurances from the top of the group at Weebatuck, it sounds like this can be done much more efficiently there, and the kids will not have to. Transportation is constantly one of the biggest factors that make these free programs a barrier. If they have to have a parent get their kid fed and then brought back to another location and then picked up again in an hour and a half after their workshop, that lowers the ability for many of the most underserved children to be able to participate. And our goal is to, by the free program, provide high quality programming, after school programming for all kids, no matter what their economic situation. So the goal that meets that goal, more importantly than any of the infrastructure, is that they would be more likely to be able to participate. That's all I have, and I will try and facilitate this more quickly, but the program is in December, and so we do still have a little bit of time to get the flyer finalized and the last details finalized.
Great.
Are there any other town board comments? If not, I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Supervisor Perotti?
Yes.
Councilperson Soil?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Grevillard?
Yes.